Welcome into another edition of Jungle Juice, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm Sam Gormley. He's Mick Nelson. And Mick, we weren't necessarily sure we were going to get another Victory Wednesday, but look at us. Here we are.
Back in the win column, you kind of said the last time we picked the Bengals to lose, which was the Niners game, they ended
we
up
both
winning.
picked the Bengals to lose.
Yeah, that we both picked them. Both picked them. Yeah, not 1-1, but yeah, picked the Bengals to lose against the Jaguars for Monday night's game, and we're pleasantly surprised and pleasantly wrong.
Yes, I've never been more happy to be wrong. We don't like admitting when we're wrong, personally. No. I think we're conceited like that. But hey, you know what? If it means that, because I know I was in overtime, I had a nice little parlay going. It was like a 5 or a 6 leg, and I'm not a big, I gamble, but I'm not like one of those people that'll drop, I say this and it's really showing how much I gamble is, I don't even drop $20. Like the most I will really ever bet is, I think I've already only put down like a $10. Like that's just, I don't usually go more than that because my thought is more bets, try and hit more and so on. But I had a $4 parlay for the Bengals and it was 5 legs and I hit 4 of them. And the 5th one was Jaguars money line. So in overtime, it was $4 to win 80. So that's a decent little payoff. That's, a lot of money. And so in overtime, I'm sitting there. I'm like, well, if they lose, I win $80. But if they win, I'm happy. What is better in this?
Oh, hedging your happiness is one of the best things about sports gambling. I don't necessarily do it on individual games for the Bengals. But I kind of did that last year, and I bet on the Niners to win the Super Bowl last year and was just hoping the Bengals would win. I mean, I ended up just sad across the board because, that's just life. But, yeah, you're hedging your happiness a little bit, Sam, by picking the Jaguars money line. And yeah, you lost the parlay, but you watched your team get a dub, so...
Yeah, and we'll have to talk about that coming up here in a few minutes about the game specifically. Also on the show, we'll break down the Colts, talk a little bit about, the playoffs. Is that something that the Bengals legitimately have? Because the path is interesting for the Bengals because they play a lot of teams that are ahead of them in the wild card hunt over these next couple of weeks. We'll talk about that. We'll have our keys to the game. We'll have our picks and so on. And we're going to open it up here in a few minutes with our news from the week. Remember to follow us on our social media channels. You can follow us on our podcast platforms and stream the podcast that way as well. As we have. We appreciate everyone for joining us and drop us a comment too. Let us know what you think about what we're saying. Let us know where you're watching from, who your favorite player is, or whatever. We always appreciate hearing from you, the fan, as well. But Mick, I wanted to start it off with a little bit of news from the week. Not a lot came out in the last week, but there are some things that I think are worth mentioning. Number one is that they announced that the Vikings game will officially be next Saturday at 1:00 on the NFL Network. I know that kind of surprised me. I was expecting them to go Sunday at 1:00 for that game because I didn't think that brought enough of a national audience trying to watch that with 2 backup quarterbacks, especially because this was prior to what we saw on Monday. But a Saturday afternoon is okay, I guess.
I thought they were really playing into that Jake Browning, former Vikings quarterback narrative, and that's why we got flexed to 1:00 on a Saturday.
Yeah, Vikings legend Jake Browning, is that what you're saying?
Yep. It's like Rodgers when he returns to Green Bay next year, or Brady returning to New England. Jake Browning returning to his former home.
Playing his favorite, because that game is in Cincinnati, so it doesn't, at least it's
playing against his former
teammates and brothers and so on, even though I'm not sure anybody is on the Vikings that was on hit when he was there. It's because it's been a while since he's been there.
Like a practice squad
in like 19 or something.
2019.
There probably aren't many Vikings that are still on the team. He was there with Trey Waynes. Is Trey Waynes going to be the ruler of the jungle next Saturday for the Vikings game?
That would be the best contribution that he's ever provided to the team.
He owes us something.
So who we get as the ruler of the jungle this week? We got
a little bit later on when we talk about the game specifically. I do have that. It's a good one too. We'll mention that.
I remember seeing it. I just don't remember who it is.
Jungle Juice, the official Facebook page of the Jungle Juice podcast. It was great. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Other news, Cam Taylor-Britt was officially placed on IR with an ankle injury. Zach Taylor spoke today. He didn't use the exact word optimistic, but he said he feels good about a return this season, and that would be a return against the Chiefs.
Really? Okay.
So he would return against the Chiefs. So he would return with at least guaranteed of 2 games in the regular season. And then the other news, and it's one that I always like every year, is Ted Karras was named the Bengals nominee for Man of the Year.
Yeah, no surprise on that one. He's got his own Cincy clothing line, right? He's got hats. He's the owner of Cincy Hats, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and can't remember what the charity is for, but he's obviously gained a lot of
traction. It's a Cincy Hat charity, yes.
It's a charity. What's the cause for it?
They do it's a lot of and I'm now you're putting me on. To be honest, I can't remember everything that he does.
We don't really look into charity that much. We're typically charity cases. Let's see, Cincy Hats, just to see what the deal is.
While you're talking about that, though, I like it, and I hope that he can potentially win or get more recognition, because for one, I think the hats are good. And I think if my memory's right, all proceeds from those hats go to it. It's a community, according to Riley, who writes in, he says, a community for mentally disabled adults so they can live independent but assisted living.
The house of the village of Marici. Yeah.
So that's awesome. So I hope Ted Karras,
that is awesome.
You can vote for him on social media. If you go to the Bengals Twitter page, you can see how you can use the hashtags and so on to give Ted a vote. And hopefully Ted Karras can be the winner of this year's Walter Payton Man of the Year. Those are most of the news headlines for this week. So how about we hop into the game on Monday night as the Bengals move to 4-0 in the White Tiger helmets.
And defeated the Jacksonville.
It is. It defeated the Jacksonville Jaguars in overtime, 34-31. The game that will be known as, we had the Ryan Finley game. Even though Ryan Finley didn't necessarily play great in that game, and against the Steelers, on Monday Night Football. This game, though, Jake Browning, the AFC Offensive Player of the Week, was phenomenal.
I still like the Finley performance more, but that's just because it was literally just the craziest thing I've ever seen from it was hilarious from a bad perspective. Like, Ryan Finley played awful the entire game and they won. This wasn't as good because Jake Browning was absolutely incredible and the team won.
He had 4 incompletions, and I know Zach Taylor said this earlier. He had 4 incompletions.
2 of them were drops.
2 of them were drops. One was a throwaway, I think, and then the other one was a tip ball.
Oh, it was a tip ball. Okay.
Tip ball. And he was fantastic in running the offense. 33 of 37, I think, was his final line. And it was one of those things that it started off slow, but I think that was the game plan. I think they were trying to do a lot of short passes to open up the deep game, because once it did, it was like they flipped a switch and Jake Browning was just throwing dimes left and right all over the field. Jamar Chase had another big game. T. Higgins had a couple of big catches. Tyler Boyd had a couple of big catches. Trenton Irwin. I mean, it's just one of these things in this offense. We can keep on naming names of guys, but it starts there with Jake Browning.
Yeah. Probably one of the best quarterback performances I've ever seen from any Bengal during any time of, since I've started watching them. And it's been, what is this, year 21 of me watching the team on a regular basis. Browning was absolutely incredible. You're going to see a bunch of first stats with him, with, first quarterback to have an over 85 completion percentage within his first two starts and to throw for 350 yards. And we all knew Jake was pretty smart with the football. My biggest worry with him was just that he didn't necessarily have the arm talent that I feel like an NFL quarterback should have. And Jake went out there, he tossed some really nice balls. Was there a ton of zip on the balls? No. I mean, I would prefer to see more zip on the balls, but the one thing Jake Browning has when he throws the ball is an insane amount of touch. And he was crazy accurate with the football. There was one screen pass to Joe Mixon, and I think it only went for 5 to 10 yards, but he literally had to eephus pitch.
Yep, I know the exact play you're talking about. I think
it
might have been over Josh Allen.
Yeah, over Josh Allen's head, and it was beautiful. I was really impressed with the way Jake Browning performed, and I think he knows that he's probably playing to get a really decent sized backup contract somewhere, or even potentially some starting time if he just plays the way he did last week.
What we're going to find out here in a game like that on Monday and over these next couple of weeks is Jake Browning Gardner Minshew or a Ryan Fitzpatrick in that realm where he's the guy that bounces around the league, plays for a lot of different teams, but he's always a backup quarterback that finds his way in and starts. He can win you games and so on. Or is he Ryan Finley, where he had his shot, he blows it. Next thing you know, he's out of the league and he's probably working down at the local McDonald's.
Yeah, they're usually real estate agents, but yes.
Or insurance or whatever it might be.
Salesmen, adjusters.
High school football coach. And that's going to be the question. I think game one after the Steelers, Mick, I think you were right. You weren't on team start A.J. McCarron, I don't think, but you were closer to start A.J. McCarron than you were to full faith in Jake Browning. I think that's probably safe to say, correct? You were trending towards that direction.
I would say
I'm not saying you were
not. Yeah, the Steelers game was not a good game for Browning.
And now I think you're probably in the realm of he's starting the rest of the season, whether he's healthy or not, and he's earned that right.
I think probably that's going to be the case. I'm not, I want to see a more consistent. I want to see it happen for a few more games, at least these next two games, which I think bodes pretty well for them. Both games are at home. Both teams have backup quarterbacks as well. And both teams are also fighting for the playoff lives. I think that these are going to be two very, very good games coming up with the Colts and the Vikings. So if we can see it on a consistent basis against those two teams, I definitely think he starts, how many games they have after that? 3, 2?
3. You got 5 games left in the regular season. Colts, Vikings, Steelers, Chiefs, Browns.
Yep.
Browns.
So I think if you see good games out of Browning in those two games, obviously he's going to start the rest of the year. But if you start to see Browning unravel, the team's out of playoff contention, I could just see the Bengals starting McCarron just to make fans happy. So
a couple of other finish your point there.
Yeah. I'm done. I'm good there.
A couple other standouts for me in the Jaguars game is Chase Brown. And this is an interesting stat. Chase Brown on offense, only 11 snaps, but of those 11 snaps, 9 carries for 61 yards. I really like what the Bengals offense did with him. If anything else, just to see what they had in him, because I think you have to. Because if you don't, or maybe you get in here and you realize, Chase Brown is not the guy, then you know you're going to have to look into the draft to potentially grab another running back or look in free agency to grab another running back because Joe Mixon is ancient in the terms of running backs. And I think you like what you saw from Chase Brown in really his first true opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this was, I think these were the first rushing attempts he's had in a game, right? This year.
Yeah, he's had a couple.
Maybe against the Titans or the Rams, maybe he had a couple, but definitely his biggest workload he's ever had in his career. Ran nine times for 61 yards. I liked the way that he ran the ball. I like that he has more of a center of gravity to him, where he's not just constantly getting tripped up all the time like Joe Mixon does. I think that's one of my biggest pet peeves with Joe Mixon's game is that. I thought he hit the holes okay. I think there definitely could be some room for improvement, but it wasn't terrible. When he did hit the holes, he hit them hard. He reminds me a lot of P. Ryan in the way that he plays, and I know that's kind of a cop out, but I think that's what, just given what P. Ryan was to the team, but I think that's what the Bengals were kind of going for when they were drafting Chase Brown, this short, stocky, decent receiver, good set of hands, in a good center of gravity that,
he is what they wanted Chris Evans to be.
I think so too. I mean, Chris Evans was more of that athletic type, though. He was more of a slash and dash kind of guy. I think Chase Brown is more of those between the tackles kind of guys. And I don't know. I was very happy with the way he played as well.
To me, a couple of the other standouts, I thought really the defense as a whole played better than they had the past couple of weeks. Was it good? No. But I think they did better, especially against the run. I think you saw some decent things against the run. I don't think ETN really did much. Now, ETN was coming back from injury, wasn't maybe necessarily 100%, but I think for the most part, I at least feel decent about the defense. But then again, that is a very low bar considering what we had the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was actually I was pleased with the defense. I mean, the Jaguars, and Lawrence played the majority of the game, but the Jaguars have a good offense. Lawrence has a top 5 arm in the NFL. Has had a pretty solid year. They've got a good set of receivers in Ridley, Kirk, Kirk didn't really play in this game. He lasted one catch, in which he. Did you watch I'm guessing you watched that play, right? The Kirk.
Well, I was watching live. Yes.
Yeah. Did you see any replays on where the ball hit?
No, I missed that.
It got him right in the cojones.
Oh, I did see somebody said that that's his injury. I don't know whether that was actually true. They called it a groin
injury. Yeah, it was right in the groin area. It looked extremely painful. Anyways, I think they went up against a good offense. I wasn't surprised that the run defense showed up. I don't think Jacksonville's run blocking is very good, and ETN has only ran the ball for 3.7 yards per attempt for the season. So I think the Bengals did a good job of maintaining him and keeping the trend for that Jaguars run blocking offensive line. I thought the pass rush was really good too. I think Trey Hendrickson, DJ Reader combined for 13 pressures. They had a few sacks in there, and some of them were very crucial. So, I thought the defense was pretty good. Coverage wasn't that great though.
Other thing, I think the offensive line as a whole too. I mean, because I think the Jaguars had 2 sacks. The first one was probably on Jake Browning for just holding the ball too long. Because I think, there is the such thing as a sack on the quarterback. Yep. And then the other one was just completely blown coverage, and Josh Allen had the easiest sack of his entire life because there was something was not communicated there at all. Orlando Brown cut in, Bolson cut in. Brown probably should have went out. I don't really know what happened there.
Just a miscommunication between the two, I think.
And sometimes that happens too. And But I think that the offensive line as a whole, they obviously run blocked well because the run game was pretty decent for the Bengals.
Yep.
So I think as a whole, the offensive line played one of their better games against a Jaguars defensive line, too, that it's not like it's an awful defensive line by any stretch.
Yeah, the offensive line looked decent. I thought pass blocking was actually really impressive in the game. I think they only gave up the starting 5 offensive linemen gave up 7 pressures, which is on the low end, I think, for their statistical output this season. And 3 of them came from Jonah, actually. So, I mean, the other 4, you're giving up 1 pressure from each of them in a game. I'll take that. I'll take that every day of the week. So, I thought that they maintained themselves pretty well. I think the run blocking could have been better, but I don't think it was atrocious by any means. Yeah, I think it's probably their most complete pass blocking game of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And now we do at least have to talk some about the trick plays.
Okay. We'll just skip to the ugly because there's only 2 things I have in the ugly, and the trick plays where they're in the ugly.
Did you have any other of standouts? I guess Money Mac deserves it, but I feel like he just gets overlooked because he just does what he does.
So close. He was so close to hitting that 57-yarder too, or 58-yarder.
And it just.
I remember seeing it. I thought it was going to be way shorter than the crossbar. I'm not going to lie, but it was definitely on target. So yeah, Shooter had a good game, and a big shout out to DJ Reader. I think DJ Reader absolutely ate in this game, and I know it kind of touched on him with the 6 pressures, but 6 pressures was a menace in the run game. I think he had one of his better games of the year as well.
The trick plays, and I really, to me, the biggest trick play to talk about is the second one. Because the first one, Chase threw, Jake Browning probably should have just dropped it, but they, that happens. The second one, though, and I think that there's 2 ways to look at it. For one, I think you can look at it of, should they have called it? And 2, is it blamed on the call or blamed on the players? And I think to start off with the first one is, should they have called it? I think everyone's saying everything was working, so why would you do that? And I think the thought process is everything's working, so what's the defense probably think you're going to do?
Keep doing what you're doing.
So if anything, the thought process is that's the best time to call it, because the defense would not be expecting it at all. Would be probably the thought process Zach Taylor was thinking at the time. Now, the play call itself, Tyler Boyd, if you think he gives a better throw, that play's blocked up and Joe Mixon is gone.
Mm-hmm.
For one, credit goes to Josh Allen for making a good play, but then also Tyler Boyd. I mean, that was not a good throw.
No, I'm not going to put too much blame on Zach. Like, I actually like that he actually tried to come up with a couple of trick plays, because he never does that. I don't think I've seen a single trick play this year up until last week. Not even a flea flicker, actually. Yeah, I mean,
there was a flea flicker earlier in the year. There was one. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember which game.
It might have been the Cardinals game.
Yes, I think it was the Cardinals game.
Okay, so one trick play.
Yes, and I'm not
12 games or 11 games or whatever. So I liked that he called a trick play. I liked that it had some like flag football variations to it, where you were kind of doing a lateral pass to the opposing, or to the opposite receiver, or to the receiver on the far side of the field. And yeah, it was just poor execution. Like, I think that, when you're watching the play being ran in flag football, if there's nothing down the field, you either pass it back to the quarterback or whatever, or you just sprint down the field with the ball and see if you can get some yardage. And that's what Jamar definitely should have done. He should have just went down the field or whatever and seen if he could pick up a yard or two. And probably the same with Tyler Boyd, because
if anything, what Jamar Chase should have done is just thrown the ball onto the sideline, just thrown it away.
I mean, yeah, throw the ball.
That's what Chase should have done.
The field. I mean, I would say that.
Well, but Jamar, I don't think had the room to run. I think he was about to be hit.
Mm-hmm.
So Jamar probably should have just taken it and just thrown it to Zach Taylor on the sideline. probably would have been my thought process with it at least. But no,
Yeah.
I don't have anything wrong with a call at all. It just didn't work.
Yeah. And Boyd just has to know to not throw that ball. Like both of them should know not to throw that ball. Like, the Jamar one could have definitely cost them a turnover as well. It wasn't like it was a clean pass back to Jake. I don't think. I think a defender was closing in on that one. So I don't know. Trick plays were bad. The other ugly I have is DJ Turner. I think he did have at least one pass defense that looked really good, if I remember correctly.
He came in and he laid the big hit too on.
And he laid the big hit. So he made a few decent plays, but man, they were really targeting him down the field, and he gave up some big plays to Ridley and Ingram, and it wasn't his best game. So
I think one of the things I do want to talk about too, to kind of close our discussion here on the Jags game. And I think I saw a post, it might have been in the Houday Nation Facebook page of, I think the question was something along the lines of, did you like Jamar Chase taunting on the long touchdown? For one, I was surprised they didn't throw a penalty. Not because I think it should be, because I don't. Like even Josh Allen, when he did it, why are we throwing that?
I think it was just subtle enough.
Yes. But, Jamar just turns around and just kind of backpedals and looks at him as he goes in. And I think I saw the question was, do you like that or do you not like that? I don't.
I thought it was awesome.
I thought so too. It's fun. Like, listen, these guys have fun. And I know that Jamar Chase, when he asked about it, I think he said his direct quote was, "I was feeling evil."
Yeah, I just felt like being evil.
Yes, which I don't. And I kind of agree with Riley. Very Ocho-like.
I like that Jamar's kind of coming into his own as like this just like trash talking receiver because he's just so much better than everybody else. But he's not necessarily a diva or looking for theatrics either. Like, I think he's just a dog that, that just plays his heart out every Sunday and is just better than everybody. But he's not like, Ocho would obviously do all the theatrics involved, and that was also fun to watch. But I just really like that Jamar and who he's kind of turned into as a leader on this team.
And then we also got to talk about, what was Orlando Brown Jr. saying? On the first touchdown to Joe Mixon, he runs and he yells at the camera, "Jack butt." And I think everyone was just like, "What? Why?"
Yeah.
Was he just shouting out his favorite movie series? I don't know. I found it kind of funny.
Jack, a double $. That's
yes.
Not Jack butt, yeah. But I was like, what the hell are you? Okay. I wonder who that was directed at.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what I want to know.
Because we all hate John Perry.
Yes, I hope so. I hope so. With that win, though, it pretty much kept open the window for playoffs. Now,
yes.
I hear the old thing, and Riley might be right here too. It might be a little screw you to the ESPN guys picked against him. I don't know. It with him, it wouldn't shock me if it was him just yelling at one of his friends from back home too. Like who knows? It could have literally been anything. And I don't know if a media member asked him and I missed it or what it might be. But the playoffs, you're looking at it. Bengals right now they're technically in, but with their conference record, they're way down the pecking order right now.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, they have the teams in front of them. Riley did say apparently he was asked, and that's what was why. Was to the ESPN guys for picking against them. Interesting. Nice. I don't know that okay. I was kind of hoping that there would be a little bit better story. No. Did you want to get that off your chest here? Or you feel better now?
Not much of a soapbox on this one. I just think they're, other than Buck and Aikman, they did a good job signing those guys because I think they're really good. I just think their sports media quality is pretty subpar. Anyways, playoffs.
So, but I mean, you look at this: Bengals 6-6, but they play multiple teams in front of them that are in the playoffs right now.
In the hunt, yeah,
correct. And are ahead of them. Starting on Sunday against the Colts. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. You've got City near West Virginia, who technically is still somehow involved in the playoffs. And then you got Cleveland to close out the year. And then technically, you do have the Chiefs in that realm. Now, the Chiefs are different because they're leading the division and so on. They're more solidly in the playoffs as far as that. But your other three of Cleveland, Colts, and City near West Virginia, you rip off three of those wins there, and it gets interesting. Is it crazy to talk about the playoffs right now, though, Mick?
Absolutely not. I mean, I thought if we lost this game and by a comfortable margin, I would say yes. But no, it's not out of the question. Team 6-6, and like you said, they've got a lot of potential playoff implicating games ahead of them. They're playing the Colts. The Colts are right now, I think, slated to make the playoffs as a 7 seed, if I remember correctly. Maybe it's 6 seed. Let's see. But yes, you got the Colts, got the Steelers and the Vikings, or not the Vikings and the Browns, and also the Vikings. Vikings are in playoff contention, just on the other side of the.
Right now, the Colts are the 6th seed. So right now, it's Steelers 5 seed, Colts 6 seed, Browns 7 seed. So you're playing the 5, 6, and 7, all in these next 3 out of the next 5 weeks. You're playing 5, 6, and 7 in the playoff realm. Bengals technically are the 11th seed right now. Now, obviously, I know that there isn't an 11th seed. And they're the bottom of the pecking order on that because of their conference record, which is not great. That's the one thing to look at with that. But if you rip off and you beat those 3 teams, I mean, that's what you have to do. You can't lose.
You have to win you have to definitely win those 3 games to be in.
And then maybe you might even have to split then Chiefs and Vikings.
I think they probably need to go 4-1 to for sure get a playoff spot. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility if they get 3 of their next 5, especially if those 3 are wins against the Colts, the Browns, and the Steelers. So yeah, the playoffs aren't out of the question. How far they make it in the playoffs, I'm not sure. It's
matchups. It would all depend on matchups.
It all depends on matchups. I mean, we did just prove that we could beat
Jacksonville.
A number 1, potential number 1 seed. With Jake Browning at quarterback. So I mean,
and you look at this, and here's the biggest thing with the AFC right now. I think it was the stat that so many of those teams that are right now in the AFC playoffs are going to be starting a backup quarterback this week. Steelers are. Now, I don't know that there's really that much of a difference between their backup quarterback and their starting quarterback, but still, Browns are, Colts are, Jaguars are. And so what is that? 4 out of the 7, because Chiefs obviously aren't, Ravens aren't, and Dolphins aren't. And then you drop down to that. You've got the Texans, who don't have a backup quarterback, but they still have a rookie quarterback. Now he's playing really good, but rookie quarterback. And you're just seeing that there's so much parity in that. But with rookie quarterbacks and backup quarterbacks, I think it's almost impossible to predict because of that. Especially if you look, though, but if the Jags keep dropping down, and it is, we know that Trevor Lawrence has an ankle sprain. Now, ankle sprains are weird, like most injuries like that. And we don't know whether it is a high ankle sprain, and how severe it is. And so on to know, is he going to be back in 3 weeks? Is he going to be back first week of the playoffs? Is he not going to be back until the AFC Championship? Like, we don't know the answers to those questions, to where you sneak in there, the Jags drop down to the 4 or the 3 or something in that realm. You draw them. You've shown you could beat them. And does CJ Beathard really scare you? No. And I don't know. I just think it's interesting. And I think that the playoffs, because of that win, are still a potential. Now, are we predicting it? No. But I think we're not crazy for talking about it.
No. And just to remind you guys, the Texans beat us in the playoffs with an unknown quarterback named TJ Yates as the quarterback in 2011. So I think that
thanks for that. We needed that reminder.
Sorry. I was just thinking, man, this wouldn't be the only time that just an unknown quarterback would be winning playoff games. I mean, how Case Keenum was winning playoff games in 2017 and made it all the way to the NFC Championship. So
Nick Foles won it as a backup. Now I know Nick Foles is a solid quarterback, but still,
yeah,
like it has happened before in the NFL. And again, like I said, is Jake Browning Nick Foles, or is he TJ Yates? And of
it's
the realm of
probably more on the TJ Yates spectrum, even though like TJ Yates never put up a game like Jake Browning just put up. But both of them are playoff winners.
they are.
So,
And Jake Browning right now is not. But he's also 0-0 in the playoffs. Never lost. He's never lost a playoff game when it comes to that. Jumping into the game on Sunday against the Colts, we'll start off with the injury report. For the Bengals, the injury report looks really good, all things considered. Chase Brown and Jonah Williams were both limited in practice, and that's it. There are a few other guys that were limited in practice today, but those were all vet days, so there's no designations. There's no point in even mentioning them because they're fine. The fact that both of them are limited, though, tells me they're fine. It's probably just one of those things. It's Wednesday, 2 days after a game. Zach Taylor's a player's coach. Probably said, hey, we're just going to take you a little slow, probably a little sore. And I'm sure they'll be full by Friday. So I'm not even a little bit worried about that. Now, on the other side, the Colts, they do have some injuries. 4 starters did not practice. Juju Brents, who's a corner. Braden Smith, their starting right tackle, did not practice. EJ Speed, one of their linebackers, did not practice. And Jonathan Taylor, one of their running back, their starting running back when he's in, did not practice today. Those are 4, 2 on each side of the ball that, could potentially be a factor coming up on Sunday.
Yeah. Braden Smith being out, I think, is huge, and also Juju Brents.
Now that's just did not practice today, so we don't know what that means for Sunday.
Potentially being out. Braden Smith is huge. He's one of the better offensive tackles in the NFL over the past 5 years, and he's actually graded very well this year. Him and Bernard Ryman. I mean, they've been quite the tackle duo. Both are top 10 in PFF grade for total offensive lineman play this year. Juju Brents, rookie corner out of Kansas State, also grading and playing pretty well in the secondary. And then obviously Jonathan Taylor, who hasn't been that great running the football this year, only averaging 4.1 yards per carry this year. But you still, still could definitely be a headache for opposing defenses. So, I mean, yeah, those are important injuries that the Colts potentially could have for this game.
Yeah, it'll be something interesting to watch over these next couple of days. Diving specifically into some of the specifics and some of the matchups of this game. When we look at the Bengals offense against the Colts defense, to me, when I think about this defense, and I was looking statistically, if you're not into the analytics, I guess, your expected yards per play or yards per attempt and so on, or some of those, and you just like yards per game and things like that, you're not going to find much more middle of the road team than the Colts. They're pretty much middle of the road in most of those stats. They're not an elite defense. They're not a bad defense.
No.
They're just middle of the road in most of the basic categories. But they are good at a couple of things specifically. Here's an interesting stat for you, Mick. Their blitz percentage, second fewest in the NFL, behind only the New York Jets. But they rank second in the league in sacks.
They get pressure with 4. They've got a sneaky good pass rush. DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye. I mean, who else is on there? I had some names highlighted, but yes, they've got a very good pass rush. I would say probably top 10 in the league. Samson Ebukam, that's another good name, underrated name.
He leads their team in sacks.
How many sacks does he have this year?
8.5.
That's pretty good. So yeah, I think that could be a potentially rough matchup for the offensive line. Jacksonville, I remember, when looking at the game, I was like, well, this might be actually a good game for the offensive line just because the Jacksonville D wasn't very strong up front. And, that was proven to be right for the most part, but this is definitely not going to be the case with their edge rushers and DeForest Buckner on the inside. So yeah, the Colts pass rush is a little scary. Their coverage is decent, but Juju Brent's being out could be huge.
Another stat on the pass rush as well. They're fifth in sack percentage. So that's percentage of dropbacks that end in a sack. And you listen to the teams that they trail: Browns, Bills, Ravens, Cowboys.
Those are four. Those are
pretty good pass rushes.
If somebody asked you who are the four best defenses in the league, I feel like those four would probably get mentioned.
Bills are probably, of those four, are probably four, but really they're second in that category as far as sack percentage, which I wouldn't have guessed that they would have been second. But the other three I definitely would have mentioned as far as Browns, Ravens, and Cowboys. That's showing you that this pass rush is really good. You mentioned the coverage is solid as well. If there is a weakness on this Colts defense, it's probably their rushing defense. Yes. And I'm going to get into an analytics stat here for you. They are third worst in expected points. So this is when it just takes points specifically by the rush defense. Third worst in the NFL. Trailing only the Denver Broncos and
us.
The Cincinnati Bengals, who are far. I mean, it is so far that they're in first place that they can't even look over their shoulders and see second. I mean, it's abysmal. It's a stat that I almost had to shut my computer screen because it scared me that much. But still, so that's showing you that this rush defense you can score against. Yardage wise, they're in that 10 range or something like that, yards per attempt and so on. They have given up a decent amount of total yards, but that's based on a lot of attempts against their rushing defense as well. But then again, you look at some of the division that they're in, they've played the Titans twice. Titans run the ball a lot. The Jags can run the ball at time, so you're seeing a lot that can kind of be what can inflate some of the stats as well.
Yeah. They definitely have had problems defending the run this year. Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed haven't particularly graded well. They've been pretty bottom half of the league linebackers in terms of their run defense, and their tackling grades are pretty bad. There's been a lot of missed tackles this year. I think they ranked 31st in tackling grade. So, yeah, I think that bodes pretty well for Joe Mixon and Chase Brown and company. And if I remember correctly, this might be very similar weather-wise to the game that we got against the Steelers, where it's cold and rainy and probably ugly, which bodes pretty well for running the football, and probably bodes well for both running offenses as well. So, yeah, I don't know. This is a tough game, man. This is probably the toughest matchup I think we've had to predict all year. I'm not sure I'm not sure for you, but definitely for me.
Yeah. See, I still don't know who I'm picking. I know you said you have a hot take with your pick. I know we're about 10 minutes away from making our pick or so, and I still don't know which way I'm going. How about we switch gears, talk about the Bengals defense against this Colts offense? Minshew mania.
This man is above 500 and has looked pretty awful in doing it.
But you have to love him.
By far leads the league in turnover-worthy plays amongst quarterbacks this year, which is just crazy. And he's still 7-5. Actually, he doesn't lead the league anymore. Sam Howell and Mac Jones have surpassed him, but he is tied for third. And
I don't really know how good you should feel about trailing Mac Jones, though, in turnover-worthy plays.
Well, he was by far the leader, but he I guess he's toned him down a little bit. But yeah, Minshew just finds a way to win football games. It's actually we talk about the Steelers' run this year being pretty just ridiculous. I think the Colts are probably in that same stratosphere.
Now, it does help that when you have a backup quarterback, that you have a good running attack. And whether it's been Jonathan Taylor, who's not been great, but Zach Moss, I know we had the conversation, I think it was about when Jonathan Taylor got activated, that we were curious whether how much Jonathan Taylor was actually going to get, because Zach Moss had been pretty darn solid for the Colts rushing the football.
Yeah. Honestly, I think by most accounts, I think Zach Moss has probably ran the ball better than Taylor has throughout the year. 4.5 yards a carry for Zach Moss. Definitely just absolutely destroyed other teams when he was running the ball early in the season. I remember him having, pretty good games. He had a really good game against the Ravens, actually, and the Rams. I mean, that's, so if Taylor's out, not ready to go, I'm not necessarily worried if I'm a Colts fan. If they're just going to hand the ball off to Zach Moss and he's going to get a lot more touches.
The wide receivers, I mean, Michael Pittman has had a good year. He's one of my fantasy wide receivers, so luckily I at least know that he's been a guy that I can, for the most part, trust to get me a good amount of points every single week. Alec Pierce makes his return to Cincinnati. And then Josh Downs. Is there three? I mean, it's three solid wide receivers. None of them are elite.
No, none of them really scare me.
But they can all beat you, I think, is probably a good way to describe it.
Potentially, yeah. The thing I like about the Bengals coverage this week against Colts receivers, they don't have to deal with an elite tight end this year or this week either. Evan Ingram, they seem to do worse against prototypical tight ends. Evan Ingram is kind of more of a receiver, and they actually contained him pretty well. But in the coverage, probably had their best game that I've seen in a while last week against the Jaguars. But then you deal with the guy with Freiermuth, and they just can't cover him. They bode well. The Colts don't really have that type of tight end on their roster either. So I like that matchup as well. The receivers are, like you said, they're pretty solid. Yeah,
I mean, you got Mo Alley Cox.
Yeah, that doesn't really do it. Kylan Granson doesn't really do it. Where's Jelani Woods been? Has he been hurt all year?
I have no idea. That's one. He didn't pop up in the research when I was looking at it. But that's the thing. I think this offense shouldn't terrify you.
No. Especially
with Gardner Minshew. But then again, Gardner Minshew, he can have really good moments. But then again, to me, the biggest key about this game is going to be that you mentioned those turnover-worthy plays is, can the Bengals capitalize on them? And that's kind of twofold. One is when, can they actually get the turnover? And then also, can they turn that turnover into points? And to me, that is going to be, I think, points off of turnovers is going to be the stat. Like, if you would tell me that I can't watch the game and I'm going to have to watch, just look at stats, that would be one of the stats that I would look at in this game, and points off of turnovers to tell me if the Bengals won the game or not.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think matchup-wise, I think both teams, I think if we're looking at the Colts offense, I think their receivers are probably a little bit better than how our coverage has played this year. And I think that their offensive line is probably matching up pretty well with our pass rush and our run defense in the trenches. And then the X factor is definitely, if the defense is wanting to win this game, is definitely forcing turnovers out of Minshew. And as we've mentioned before, he's number 3 in the league in turnover-worthy throws this year. I think they'll definitely force some mistakes out of him, and they definitely have to.
Game information for Sunday afternoon against the Indianapolis Colts. It'll be on CBS. Tom McCarthy, James Lofton, Jay Feely, and Tiffany Blackman will have the call. It's like CBS's number 6 crew, so they're getting down. Tom McCarthy is also the play-by-play guy of the Phillies. You'd recognize his voice if you've listened to him. I always find it funny that Jay Feely is one of the guys because it's just funny to me that a kicker is a color
Yeah, like
analyst.
what does a kicker really have to?
Have to bring analysis wise. I don't know. I just find it funny.
I mean, more than you and or me, I guess.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that,
100%. But I'm more just always chuckle when he's in the booth. The ruler of the jungle will be Bengals legend Reggie Williams, who will be
oh
making the
yeah, that's
return
who it was.
to Cincinnati. It'll be good to see Reggie Williams up there. Of course, one of the legends of Cincinnati defense as a linebacker there for the Bengals. At halftime of the game, you're going to have a punt, pass, and kick contest, which I guess should be interesting. I think it's kids doing it, so at least that
Not
I'm
as good as
assuming
last week's or
no,
last.
not as good as mascot football. I would just wish mascot football was a thing every week. I enjoy it probably a little bit too much because as I brought up the comment last time, it is borderline child abuse. But I'm here for it.
Well, do you want to start like we just got to find an investor, but I think we could find a market for like mascots versus like little kid league. You know, I think we could let's launch one.
Live streaming it, you better believe people would watch it. There's no question about that. People would be watching mascots versus kids. The official, Sean Hockley, obviously a name that everyone knows. You do know this guy. Bengals record,
not good. I think
1-3.
Okay,
1-3. The one win was the Lions in 2021. The 3 losses. Can you name any of the 3 losses? If you can get one of these, I'd be impressed.
Steelers lost week 1 of 2022.
Good job. Look at you.
That's the only one I know.
I was going to say, if you pulled out any of the other 2, I would be impressed. One was this year. Ravens home.
Okay.
This year. And then in 2021, another game we were at, the Chargers. In 2021, he was the official of that game. So Bengals are 1-3 in games that Sean Hockley is the official, of course, the son of one Ed Hockley, who's a legend in his own right. Mick, your keys to the game for the Bengals to pick up the win against the Colts, or do you have any other thoughts about this Colts game as we get closer and closer?
We touched on I already touched on forcing turnovers out of Minshew. I think that's going to be the biggest key to the team overall. On offense, I think the run game is going to be crucial here. Like we said, the Colts don't have a very good run defense. Weather could potentially be a factor in this game. They're definitely going to have to run the ball a decent amount. And I remember seeing a tweet, or maybe yesterday or this morning, it said, you showed 3 of the Bengals victories this year, and they were against San Fran, Buffalo, and Jacksonville, and showed the rushing attempts in those games, and they were all 3 games had over 25 rushing attempts, and those were against 3 really good teams. So I think running the ball needs to be a part of this team's identity. I don't want to see a game like that we saw against the Steelers a couple weeks ago.
Is that a key, or do you want to go into your keys now to victory?
No, that's the key. The rushing offense,
and then I think turnovers
out of Minshew.
Yeah, I agree. So you have been you've been teasing. So I guess I still don't know who I'm going to pick. So I'm going to let you pick first, and what would you decide I'm going to? Because I still don't know who I'm picking in this game. You know what? Bengals 24-23.
Okay.
McPherson at the gun.
Bengals 20, Colts 20. I'm going tie game this week.
Oh gosh.
We're going with the tie. This is too hard to pick. I think this is a very evenly matched game. If Burrow was in, be a win. But no, this is going to be a tie.
Yeah, no, you get that again.
You can give me the sound effects all you want, but if this game ends up in a tie, best believe we're gonna be showing clips of this.
A tie. Gosh. I really thought the Jacksonville game on Monday was gonna end in a tie. I thought it was just gonna be one of those that ended in a 31-31 tie. And then I heard the stat, I think Scott Van Pelt, that a Monday Night Football game hasn't ended in a tie in over 40 years.
So the fix was in, is what you're saying.
Yes. Just kind of funny with it. But so you're predicting a 20-20 tie. I said Bengals 24-23. But I think we can both agree, because I know the spread right now, I think, is Bengals 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pick 'em, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that there is a result on Sunday that would surprise me. I really don't think it is.
Well,
I blowout either way, close game, 10-point game, other way. One quarterback has a great game. One quarterback has a truly terrible game. One running back goes off. Like there is nothing that would necessarily surprise me in this game on Sunday. Nothing at all.
we've seen it all at this point. Jake Browning, 350 yards, 87% completion rate against the Jaguars. Like, yeah, I agree, anything can happen in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised either. I don't know. 24-23.
Yes.
What you're picking.
That's what I'm picking. McPherson at the gun. His second consecutive week. McPherson wins it.
I liked seeing it. It felt like a little bit of a throwback on Monday, watching him kick a game-winning field goal. I feel like we haven't seen one from him in a while.
He seemingly only does it on the road.
Yeah.
He misses the game-winning field goals at home.
Yeah. Hey, Chiefs game-winning.
Okay. That was I guess he's had two.
That was a crucial field goal to win the division.
Yes, an old extra point, pretty much is what it was. I'm not gonna
19-yard field goal.
Okay, and I mean you had, because I mean you Steelers last year, Packers last year, Packers year before last. Yes, 2021. It's just kind of funny, but yet he's been very consistent and always hitting them on the road, which I again doesn't mean anything. No, of course not.
We need to move the stadium further away from the river, and I bet we get more favorable winds. That way.
Yeah, I mean, my brother's an architect. I can ask him if that's possible, but I don't know how easy that is.
There's land in I don't know, KC Stadium is like 20 minutes away from downtown. I mean, we could throw a stadium out in like,
I'm sure the taxpayers of Hamilton County would love to build a brand new stadium, Mick.
Well,
it's easy for us to say, living in Kentucky, yeah, let them pay for it. We're fine. They can pay for it if they want.
I gotta pay for it a little bit.
Well, I guess you do. I don't.
Yeah, I get Cincinnati tax taken out of my paycheck.
That's funny. Mick, it's been fun as always. Bengals, Colts on Sunday. I don't know what to expect, but I'm excited for it because of that, because I don't know what to expect.
Guys, if you see a tie happen against the Colts, just remember who told you that the game was going to end in a tie, and it was me.
There you go. I'm expecting you to do a exact score bet on DraftKings. So
okay.
I think we need that.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll put money on this one.
We'll do it. He'll make that happen. Make sure to follow us on our social media channels, Jungle Juice. You can follow us there. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform as well. We're on Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, all of the different ones. You could subscribe, listen to the podcast that way as well. And yeah. It's always good to hear from you watching at home. Thanks for those that were able to drop comments. And that'll wrap us up for this week's show. Any closing thoughts, Mick?
Nope. Show out in full force on Sunday, and let's get this team a win. Who day, guys?
That'll wrap us up. So until next time, who day?
Who day?